Hey all, Rob here, and the topic of this video is the future of the comic book industry, or perhaps the lack of a future of the industry. You see, when I look at the comic book industry now, first we have to acknowledge it is primarily dominated by the superhero genre, even though there are many other genres from horror, science fiction, romance, and more. It's basically superheroes in America. And the two big publishers, Marvel Comics, DC Comics. But you know, when it comes to comic books, that in the past 20-30 years, there has not been a new company that has become a third rival in terms of the market share, in terms of the overall industry. At one time in the 90s, it was Image Comics and maybe even Valiant Comics. But when you look at it now, the market share, those companies have less than 10%. I think it was like 8%, maybe 6%. And they're not a factor. There is no real third rival that you would say, okay, it's the big three. When it's not, it's really the big two again. And when I was thinking about the past in comic books and the golden and the silver age, which have made most of the superheroes and supervillains that have lasted, that have been around. And in the following decades since, there has not been so many superheroes that have been relevant. You know, you might say Deadpool, well, he's modern, right? But Deadpool created, like what, late 80s, early 90s? He's almost 30 years old, the character, for real. So at almost 30 years old, the character, I wouldn't consider Deadpool to be a modern character by today's standards. That's just my view on it. And then so we look at the future of the industry, and there's only two big publishers, and there does not seem to be any third rival publisher happening anytime soon, if ever, possibly. And I'm talking real competitive level, not just like minor leagues or small percent-wise. I'm talking like really right up there with Marvel and DC. And there's not, at least not anymore. And then you look at the industry that most of the comics now, and I'm talking the monthly publications, are on characters and teams that have been around for decades, and the original creators no longer make the books, or they're no longer around. And it's fallen onto the hands of new generations of artists and writers to tell the stories of these same characters. And there seems to be a lack of fresh ideas, fresh new characters, and fresh overall stories. Because how many times could the Batman fight the Joker when you know Batman's only going to capture the Joker in the end, and the Joker will escape eventually to commit more crimes? And it's like every Batman story at the end, he never has what it takes to finish the job. No more Joker, and then the Batman universe has to move on without the character of the Joker. It's never going to happen in the mainstream. And even if it does happen, someone a couple of years later will just remove the idea and bring back the Joker. You see, that's another problem of the comics industry, is that the sense of any lasting value, any lasting impact in the books and the stories in the modern day, it doesn't matter anymore. Because in a couple of years, maybe a decade or so, what happened that seemed traumatic or seemed to really affect the character, it gets slowly pulled away, and it's no longer relevant. It's no longer matters for the character in their history. So that sense, I guess, of them making a change, especially a big change to an established character, and then rolling it back, it makes it seem like, well, the original story that you might have invested in doesn't matter anymore. There's no sense of anything lasting for the character or for that universe. Like Marvel had events like Fear Itself. It was a big multi-part crossover. Or Dark Reign. Does it matter in the comic books anymore? Does Dark Reign have any effect on the comics? No. But back then, just a couple of years ago, it was a multi-title event across the whole line of books every month. stories on or related around that event, and then it doesn't matter. And then that is one of the problems, is that I think as readers, the storylines don't matter because they're not made to matter, because there's no sense of anything being permanent or a fixture without it being pulled away at some point, especially in modern times. And then you look at, again, these heroes. In a way, they're in a fix because you can't change them too much from what was established, and at the same time, if you don't do anything new with it, the character just becomes stale in a way. And so they have those problems. So the lack of innovation, the lack of new characters and ideas that last. And I think when you look at superheroes, you know, what is the modern talk? Is it the comic books? No, it's the movies, it's TV shows, the toys, the animation, and especially the movies. That's the talk of the town when you think of comic books. You don't think of comic book issues as the talk of the town, you know, that really matters. Look at the Hydra Cap storyline. Sure, it was a terrible idea, but it was meant to change the character, but like I said, does it matter now? No, Captain America is the same old Steve Rogers doing his same old personality and doing the stuff he did before he became Hydra Cap. So that 2 years of storylines almost of that, irrelevant, doesn't matter. So you get what I'm trying to say or trying to talk about is the superhero genre. Marvel, DC have no real third rival, and what's at Marvel and DC now is just characters that are not really evolving or changing, and even if they do, it just, the ideas get pulled away at some point, so it no longer matters what you just read or invested in. And with prices going so high, almost $4 an issue if not more, for the same amount of pages, give or take, and things going digital, it's like single issues, as previously discussed, no longer really matter. But that also means buyers, are they coming in weekly, you know, or to a lesser degree, comic shops are not really thriving overall. And most of the industry is centered on the movies and talking about the movies and what's going to happen next in the films, and that's the focus of the industry. But the actual comic books, the actual issues, is, I guess that's what I was trying to talk about here, is that there's not much real growth or much of a future in comic books themselves, other than continuing what has been going on before. And I think that's one of the reasons that I just don't see anytime soon there being some super resurgence in the comic book industry itself, that the books will sell high 6-end figures, 7-end figures a month. Sure, there might be special events or special promos that do really well, but that's a short spike in sales, nothing long term. And the true innovation is, it's the movies and other media. So that's my thoughts on it. What are yours? Do you think that the industry is going to reach that next level? Is there a next level anymore? Or is pretty much comic books peaked, for the time being at least, overall? With the possibility of the future, who knows? Maybe they will peak again to a new level, or maybe they won't, and this is the best that you got. And it really does seem that the focus is not comic books anymore, it's movies. As weird as that sounds. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and talk to you later.